Hi, I'm Bert Armijo with DataGrid. In the next few minutes, I want to share the demonstration we did in Austin for DockerCon for our Skopos continuous deployment system. Now, the whole demo took about 20 minutes, so I've edited it quite heavily here for length. The whole demo actually takes 14 browser windows. I know that's a whole lot to take in, but I've organized it so it's a little bit easier to look at. Let me show you the various pieces. We have 3 instances of our test application running. The first is on Docker on EC2, the second is on Swarm on EC2, and the third is actually running on ECS. Next, we have the Skopos dashboard to help us track the deployment of our apps. And finally, we're using Slack for chat ops so we can see the interaction of various parts of our toolchain. These blank windows here are for a UI we're going to add to our test app during our demonstration. Opening up Skopos for our test app on Docker, we can see it's got 11 containers, including web servers, a database, Redis cache, and a worker for processing requests. Now that we know what we're working with, let's make some changes. First, let's change the boring user interface. Let's add some pictures of dogs and cats to make it more interesting. Once I do the commit, we'll wait and we'll see GitHub respond in chat ops. Wait a few more seconds. Well, we see the build happening. And a few seconds later, we can see that the instance on Docker is starting to deploy. If we pull up the Skopos dashboard now, we can see that our instances are starting to deploy. Because we have 3 deployments starting at roughly the same time, and the dashboard polls the instances, they may look like they're starting in a different order than we saw in the chat ops, but they're really not. Going back to the Skopos model view, it's showing us that our web servers are being deployed. Switching to the plan view, we can actually watch the progress. Right now it's deploying the result web server, so let's look at the detail view. Here we can watch as each step from deploying containers, stopping old ones, and even running quality checks is completed. With that stage complete, let's look at the Volt web servers being deployed. Again, we can see every stage as it progresses through, including the rollback if it should be necessary. If I want to, simply by clicking, I can actually see the detail view what's going to happen at each stage. As I exit out of these views, I should note this isn't just a status display. I can actually pause and single step through deployments here. Now we can see that our Docker Swarm instance is completed deployment, and the Docker instance isn't very far behind. So we're seeing the dogs and cats in the user interface now. ECS, well, that's going to take a little bit longer. I'm not going to wait for ECS though. We're going to go ahead and commit a new change. This time it's going to actually add a new interface in those blank windows. We can see that the commit showed up in our chat ops. And in a moment, we can now see that our deploy is starting, first on Docker, and then on Docker Swarm as well. Just in case puppies and kittens weren't your thing, I put a little bit more eccentric animals in this time. Note that ECS still hasn't completed the first change deploy, but I'm going to go ahead and commit a new change. This time, just to be different, I'm going to throw in an error. We can see the commit was accepted, we can see the build was done, and now the deploys are starting. The error I introduced will cause a page not to be served, and the system will recognize that through one of its quality checks. When Skopos detects the error, it will roll back automatically, so we won't see our UI go away for very long, if at all. Great! Now time for one last change. I'm going to go ahead and restore to the original version before I started messing with it. While we're waiting for that to start, did you notice that the ECS instance is now showing us puppies and kittens? The ECS instance will continue its deployment until it's completed. Then Skopos will check for new changes and build a new plan based on those changes and the state of the application at the time. As a result, the ECS instance may never pick up some of my changes because I'm eliminating them now. We can see now that our Docker and ECS instances have begun their final deployments. As they progress, our animals will disappear and we'll see the old boring UI return. While we're waiting for those deployments to finish, I'd like to point out one of the fun things about this demo. With a single commit, I'm able to deploy to multiple platforms, even though those platform deployments happen at completely different speeds, and some of my commits overlap those deployments. And I did it all without writing a single script. Well, the eclectic animal photos are gone, and we can see that the boring interface has returned on the Swarm instance. I had to edit out a big chunk of time there, but we can now see that our Docker deployment has completed and our boring interface is back. Meanwhile, our ECS instance finally has our cats and dogs showing up in the first deployment. That completes our demonstration of Skopos, the fastest way to get code into production. Thanks for watching.